What is going on, everybody out there in the YouTube trucking community? Sean Cahalan, Christian Brother Trucker, coming at you again with another video this morning. I'm gonna give you guys an update. Trucking hard. Just ran a load of potatoes from Idaho over here to Wisconsin, and I'm gonna get a reload and go back to Idaho. So out and back, running hard, running good. I'm working with Doug Andrews Distributing, and it's been an amazing job, and they've been keeping me rolling, keeping me busy, and I really like my driver manager, so just really enjoying working for this company. Today's topic, because I know all y'all are really curious of what the topic's going to be today, and today's topic is going to be talking about the government. Ooh, nobody likes the government, right? I know. But, you know, there are some things that happen that, you know, might not seem right because people don't like change. And, you know, but me personally, with certain things, I don't like corporations and big companies taking advantage of us truck drivers and our lack of education when it comes to business practices. So what am I talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is this new bill that's getting ready to be passed that is going to do away with independent contractors. At least that's the hype on YouTube. But Biden is talking about changing the rules for the classification of calling yourself an independent contractor, quote unquote independent contractor. So I'm going to dive into this topic, and I'm going to give you my thoughts, my opinions, and you know, you guys can agree, disagree, really doesn't matter. Everybody's free to their opinion. But me personally, when I was very young, I was exposed to this terminology of being a quote-unquote independent contractor when I was not an independent contractor by any means, by any definition. So my first exposure to this was back when I framed houses. My father was a carpenter for 20 some odd years, and he taught me the basics of how to frame houses. And you know, we're talking about wood structure framing, you know, where you strap on a big old set of nail bags, and you know, you're running a nail gun and saw, and you're working with tools and building houses. Well, I went to work for this gentleman in Montana, and he told me that I needed to go down and file as a independent contractor, and it was an exemption that you got from the state of Montana, which was a work comp exemption form. I had no idea what he was talking about, so I had to go down to the courthouse and I had to file as an independent contractor and file a work comp exemption form. Now, I was by no means an independent contractor. You know, I worked on this guy's crew, and he told me what time to show up. He told me what time we rolled up, you know, what time we were done for the day. He told me I was using all of his tools. The only tools that I owned personally were my nail bags. And so, you know, you might be thinking, well, why would he do that? Well, because he's taking advantage of a legal loophole, which made it to where he didn't have to cover me under work comp. Something that's in place to protect you as an employee, and something that would come into play if you injured yourself, especially in framing. You know, you cut a finger off, you put a nail through your hand, you drop a wall on your head, you know, you fall off a wall, whatever the case may be, you're going to have workers' comp claim, right? So how does this guy find a loophole? Well, we'll just call you an independent contractor and say that you're independent. Well, I was, like I said, I was not an independent contractor, and I knew I wasn't an independent contractor. You know, if I called the guy up and said I wasn't coming in, you know, I might do that once or twice, and he would tell me, don't worry about coming in anymore because you don't work for me anymore. Well, you know, I don't work for you. I'm an independent contractor, right? So am I a duck or am I a swan? You know, misclassification. These companies do this, and you might think, well, what's in it for the company and what's in it for the independent owner operator or the guy that goes and forms himself as an independent business? Well, some of the things that, first and foremost, you guys need to look up the history of trucking. Go back and look at Jimmy Hoffa and the unions and the way that the organized crime syndicate, the mafia, went about finding loopholes within the government in order to extort money. Okay, one of them was lumpers, and another one was the truck leasing program, where a company buys a truck and then leases it out and makes tons of money without having the risk and the responsibilities of having to pay out expenses. So what this does basically is this puts all the financial burden onto the driver who is driving the truck and calling himself an independent contractor, who's paying for all the bills to operate the truck. Okay, so what is the definition of an independent contractor? Definition of an independent contractor is somebody who is outside of the company. So, you know, you can take and put this across any form of business that you want. An independent contractor is somebody who is independently set up as a small business, which means that he is for hire, which means that he can go and work wherever he wants. He brings his own tools, he brings his own equipment, he completes a job, and then he goes somewhere else. While under a contract, you can have extended contracts, you can have a job that, you know, under this contract is an ongoing business arrangement. Where things get fuzzy and where things get convoluted and muddy is when you, as a person, are going to work for a mega fleet, and while going to work for that mega fleet, you are driving a truck. You start out as a company driver, and you're paid by the mile, right? They tell you where to go, they tell you where to fuel, they tell you where to get your truck maintenance done, and they tell you when to go home. You know, you can put in a request to go home. You're covered under work comp, you're covered under insurance, you have retirement plans, you have a payroll, and you have all these benefits as an employee, but you're also protected by law. You have certain rights as an employee. Okay. Well, as a business, how do you make all of those rights and all of those protections, how do you make that go away? By calling yourself an independent contractor, right? Because, well, you sit there and you think, well, if I call myself an independent contractor, I am my own boss. This is the lingo that's used, right? Okay. So if I'm my own boss, then I call my own shots, and I do whatever I want, right? I go home when I want, I do this when I want, okay, well, under IRS, the stipulations to call yourself an independent contractor means that whoever you're hauling for doesn't have any say about what you do, about how the work's completed, or any of that stuff. And so you can say, well, they really don't have control over what you do. Well, actually, in certain scenarios, you're right, they don't. But in other scenarios, they do. And how do they lock you into certain situations in which you are not free to do what you want to do as an independent contractor? Well, this is when we get into lease operator. So on the surface, what it looks like is you're an independent contractor who brings your own truck. Your lease agreement is something separate from, the business, which it's supposed to be. But according to IRS guidelines and business practices, what you're supposed to do as a lease operator is you're supposed to go out to a third-party company and you're supposed to secure a contract on the truck that you bring over to lease on to a company. Okay, so what this means is I'm independent. I have my truck. I'm leasing that truck. I have a lease contract right here that financially ties me to this truck, but I'm in control and I'm subject to the lease program. Let's say Lone Mountain, just for an example, and I'm not trying to put Lone Mountain up there as a good lease program, lease company, whatever the case may be. It can be Snyder Financial, it could be Pat Car Leasing, or whatever the case may be. But you go and you secure that equipment, sign on the dotted line. Now you have a truck to use. Okay, so then it's your responsibility to find a carrier that you're going to lease the truck on to, and then you sign another lease contract, which is, I'm going to haul loads for you and you're going to pay me independently for all the loads that I do, right? Sounds good, you know, makes sense. Here's where it gets to be a little bit out of what people understand and what people don't understand about businesses and about independent contractors and how the trucking industry works as a whole. Okay, when you go to a company and you lease that truck from that company holds the lease agreement. That company holds all the power. They hold the fuel cards. They tell you where to get the truck maintenance done. They tell you where to pick up the loads. They, you know, and they are in full control, and all the loads that you haul for them. So you might be asking yourself, okay, well, what's the difference? You know, why does this even matter, and how does it make you not free as a lease operator? Okay, there's a couple of things that indicate that you're not free to go anywhere you want to go. And one of the main things is the name on the side of the truck. Okay, so let's say that I'm driving for night transportation, and on the side of my truck it says Lease to Night Transportation. My name does not go on the truck anywhere. I have no DOT authority. I have no DOT number. I have no MC number. I have nothing. Okay, and a lot of times I might be filing my taxes as an independent contractor, right? But I have no ICC filing, which means I have no authority. I have no MC number. I'm not legally an independent contractor because I am not filed with the government as a business. I am an individual. And a lot of people will go down and file their taxes, and they will file their taxes as an individual under their social security number, and they will file as a sole proprietor independent contractor. It's so what they're doing is they're going in and they're restructuring the qualifications that make you they're changing the way that you classify yourself on your taxes. So let's be clear here. What is this, and why is it coming down the pipe, and why is this changing? The reason why this is coming down like this is because a lot of people will get involved in independent contractor work, will call themselves an independent when they are not independent. They will file a 1099, which makes you liable for your taxes, but if you're not withholding taxes, guess what doesn't get paid? Okay, so if you're filing a 1099, but you never settle up your taxes, which you're supposed to withhold, which as a company driver, through your payroll, they withhold your taxes automatically. And so you go in and you file at the end of the year, and in each paycheck that you get, they withhold taxes. They withhold everything that they're supposed to withhold under the payroll laws, under the tax laws, right? As a 1099, nothing is withheld. Nothing. So what they pay you is they pay you gross. So whatever your portion is, let's say it's 90 cents a mile or $1.20 a mile or $2 a mile, all of that money is paid directly to you with no taxes being taken out. Okay, so what this means is if you're not withholding and setting aside 25% for taxes, you're going to go settle up at the end of the year, and you're going to end up owing a huge amount of taxes because your income has to be taxed. It's law, right? So what this has done is this has created a problem because a lot of people run under a 1099, but they never withhold taxes because either they're not told that they're supposed to, or they just refuse to pay the tax man, right? Oh, I'm an independent, I do what I want. I'm making all this money, and I'm spending all this money, and I'm a big truck driver, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, number one, you know, a lot of these people fail, and I mean a lot of these people fail. Over 80% of people, independent contractors, fail within their first year. Okay? Not only do they fail, but then they turn around and owe the IRS a whole bunch of back-owed taxes. Okay? Well, why does this happen? Well, because they don't have the education, they don't have the knowledge to be able to apply proper business practices and to do what they're supposed to do legally in order to call themselves an independent contractor. They're just a driver calling themselves independent when they're not. In a lot of these cases, what I have come to lovingly call these kind of people, and I was one of them, by the way, so don't think that I'm, you know, that I've never done this. A glorified company driver. Okay? That's what you are. If you're a lease operator and you're leasing from the carrier that you're driving for, and you're leasing that truck onto that carrier, and they hold the note, they hold the fuel card, they hold all the cards and tell you where to go and what to do and how to do it and blah, 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 and direct everything that you do, you're a company driver. Okay? You're not an independent anything. You're an employee that's calling yourself an independent owner-operator. A glorified company driver is what I call them. There, I said it. I know, so harsh. How could I be so mean and call somebody that? Because it's true. You know, if you were independent, you know, there's a lot of ways of going about this, but let's be clear that when you are tied to a mega carrier, Swift, Knight Transportation, CR England, you know, enter mega fleet name here, Schneider, you know, some of them do things differently, but a lot of them are misclassifying their workers. Straight up. It's just, it is what it is. If you don't believe me, go and type into the Google search the definition of an independent contractor. And it'll take you to the IRS website. And when you go to the IRS website, read what the IRS says an independent contractor is. An independent contractor is free from control. Independent contractors are not free from control. There's more that goes into this, of course. You know, do some research, look into it, and look at what they're doing and why they're doing it. A lot of people are sitting here thinking that, you know, it's an overreach by the government. It's this and that and this and that. Let's be clear here, okay? What this is they're closing a loophole that has existed to benefit mega fleets and puts drivers in a bad position that they have no business being in these positions of calling themselves an owner operator when they have no idea how to be a business, how to run a business. They don't know anything about business practices. But, you know, the mega fleets love it. The mega fleets love it because it clears up their books and they're able to not have to carry big expenses on their books, on their profit and loss statements and everything else. So, you know, if I have 100 trucks and I'm paying fuel on 100 trucks and I'm paying maintenance on 100 trucks and I have expenses, then those expenses are going to bog down my accounts receivable, right? So I'm going to be paid for the loads that I'm doing, but then that money is going to go out to maintain these trucks. Well, how do I lighten that up? Well, I signed on a whole bunch of independent owner operators and put them under a lease where I make it to where with each lease, I make money right off the top for every load that's hauled, regardless. And that's what happens, because what happens is these mega corporations, they get first access to all your funds, to all your money that you make. Okay? And what happens is every load that you haul, the carrier that you're hauling for makes money off of every mile, every load that you run. And they make that money first. And then you make a profit or a loss depending on what's left, right? And so a lot of independent owner operators or independent lease operators will sit there and wonder, well, why is it that I'm only able to do 2,000 miles, 1,500 miles, 2,500 miles a week and barely, make any money at all? Well, it's designed that way. And the reason why it's designed that way is because there's a certain threshold that you'll reach where the company makes more money than you do. They don't want you making money hand over fist, because then what happens is you're going to pay the truck off early, or you're going to become successful, and then you become a competition, and you're going to go somewhere else, or you're going to pay the truck off, or they want you spoon-fed, and they want you spoon-fed just enough to where they make money and you have the illusion that you make money, and you hope you make money, but you're never going to be able to get ahead. I've lived it several times in my life. I've done lease operating. I've done full-on owner operator, where I went and filed for my LLC. I went and got a DOT authority, MC number, all of that. And I ran for the brokers. I secured my own freight, my own loads. I did it all. And I gotta tell you that what these lease operators are doing is not owner operating. There's a big, huge difference between a person that is leasing and driving for a carrier. So that's what they're going after. What they're going after is the misclassification of drivers that are calling themselves independent who are not independent. So I'm really interested to see how those changes are going to affect tax law and the requirements that they're going to put forward that are going to try to close some of these loopholes. And I would imagine that the only thing that's really going to change is what they're going to do is they're going to create more separation between the leasing of the truck and signing it on with a carrier. They may make it completely illegal to lease a truck and sign it on with the same motor carrier. So it might create opportunities for lease companies to go about doing this a little bit differently, which, in my opinion, I think they should separate it out a little bit more. But let's just be clear on the one thing. What they're doing is they're closing this loophole of you calling yourself an independent contractor when you're not independent. You're completely dependent on mega carrier to tell you what to do, how to do it, run your business. They run your payroll. They do all that stuff for you. You're not doing anything. All you're doing is holding that steering wheel, driving down the road. That's it. That's an employee. If you're doing the same thing that an employee is doing, you're an employee. Just because they funnel the money differently and you're still doing the same thing, then you're not really an independent contractor. An independent contractor is responsible for a lot more than just doing the job. And it's like, it's like when I was framing houses. If I'm using all of ABC Construction's tools, and I am working on this guy's crew, and I'm using all of his tools, and he tells me what time to roll out, and he tells me what time to roll up, and he tells me when to show up for work, and he's paying my, he's paying me. If he has any control over the work that I do, then I'm not an independent. I'm under his authority as an employer. And companies are really crafty at blurring these lines so that you think it's like a Jedi mind trick. You are an owner operator. You are a lease operator. These are not the droids you're looking for. Yeah, they are. Call a duck, okay? If they're telling you what to do, how to do it, you're a glorified company driver. Okay, let's just be clear on that. So it'll be really interesting to see. I don't really agree with it or disagree with it, because I lean more towards I'm tired of the system being the way it is, and I'm tired of these companies taking advantage of drivers that don't know what they're doing. It's predatory, and I just really don't agree with it. So I'm excited. And a lot of people that don't like this idea are the same people that don't like the idea of having an e-log in the truck, which I love having that e-log. Same rules, right? The only difference is that I have to follow those rules, and I have to fill out my e-log every day. But at the end of the day, I outperform most of the drivers that do paper logs. And I used to run paper, and I tell you, I run just as many miles with an e-log as I did back then. So, people are resistant to change, but people are also resistant to control, right? Well, there are certain laws that we have to follow, and tax code is one of those. And if you're taking advantage of a tax loophole, the government's going to close that up, and that's what they're doing. So, unfortunately, we have to classify ourselves correctly, and we have to pay the proper taxes. So we can't call ourselves a duck when we're a swan and pay the correct taxes accordingly. So that's what it's all about. It's all about the taxes, and it's all about the government tightening up and getting its money. So hopefully that clarifies some things for you guys out there. And if you're curious about how I feel about leasing a truck, you can go back and watch some of my previous videos on this topic. But yeah, it's a lot of times you're better off just being a company driver and just getting really good at what you do. And I would put my paychecks up against any independent anything calling themselves an independent owner operator after they get done settling their taxes. But I would put my money says that I'll make more money at the end of the year than most of these so-called lease operators. I've talked to enough of them that I know, because I ask the right questions. I usually ask, how much money did you make after all of your expenses and after you paid your taxes? And most of the time, the answer is somewhere between like $25,000 and $36,000 a year. And it's like, dude, I made way more than that. So, but then they're like, oh yeah, but I grossed $150,000 or $200,000. And it's like, dude, the gross doesn't matter. What matters is what you keep. So think about that, folks. With all this information and then people griping and complaining about, all this stuff that the government's doing, owner operators are going away. No, they're not. They're not going away. They're just going to change the classifications and the requirements of how you're doing business. If you're going to call yourself an independent, you need to be independent. That's all I've got. Thanks for watching, and God bless you all.